Yes, sir.
Okay. Um, so my first coaching job, I actually started coaching 9-year-olds. At Kent when I was going to college. I went back to school to get my teaching degree because I had a Bachelor of Science degree in architecture already. And coaching 9-year-olds was so fun. My second year, I got to be the head coach because the guy that was going to be the head coach's job changed, and we had 16 players. Um, we went undefeated and outscored our opponents 152-6. And of course, I think I'm a football genius at that point after 1 year of 2 years of coaching 9-year-olds. But that just kind of solidified that I wanted to do it. So we came to North Carolina. You couldn't really get a teaching job in Ohio, and the weather's bad, so we decided to move to Ohio when I graduated. Um, so we, moved down here with my wife. Didn't have any kids at the time. Started coaching at Newton Conover, so I was there for 6 years. In my fifth year, we won the state championship. I was the OC, I think, in year four, maybe. I was promoted to be the OC. And then we won the state championship in '08. So then I got my first head coaching job, and then we had one kid at that point. Went to Richlands. I was there for a couple of years. My wife hated it. We thought we'd be by the beach forever, but that got old real quick, and it was kind of an interesting town, but we didn't really like the area that much. And my wife, we didn't have any support, and ended up having our third kid, and we wanted to move back to kind of the Statesville area, the Newton area where we started, and we had friends and family, and so we did that and came back. I was at West Iredale for a couple of years. Um, had a really bad situation and end up there, so I ended up going to Statesville Christian for two. Was blessed to be a part of a great coaching staff and some great kids there. We kind of built that program from nothing, and we ended up winning the private state championship there. And then I got the job at Independence. I was a head coach at Independence for a few years, and then we bought a house in Stony Point. I was about an hour and a half from Charlotte, so um, ended up sliding into a perfect position here, coaching with a good friend of mine, Joe Glass at Hickory, and he had just gotten the job there, and I was ready to be an assistant again. At this point now we have four kids, so being at five or six different schools, being a head coach, an assistant, a coordinator. Been 16-0, been 0-11, everything in between. And like I said, we have four kids now, and the fourth one we had three girls, and then we had a son. And since we're talking about family, I love to tell this story. So we had two. We're about 50-50 on where we're going to try to have a son and have a third. So we end up having a third girl, of course. So we're about 99% not going to have any more kids. And one day she comes to me and she says, "I want to give you a son." And I said, "Babe, we're going to have another daughter. Like it is what it is. That's what God wants for us." I guess she's like, "Nope, I got it figured out. I looked at the Chinese calendar. We need to do it right now. And 9 months later, we're going to have a boy." And I said, "Okay, yes, ma'am." She's the boss. So 9 months later, we had a boy. And so he was born with some complications. And obviously, this really changed my perspective on the whole family aspect and how it all plays together. And he was born with Hirschsprung's disease. So basically, his part of his colon didn't work. So they had to cut the bad part of the colon off. And he had a colonoscopy, or he had a bag out of his stomach for like the first 6 months. And then so that had to shrink a little bit, and then he had to grow a little bit for them to kind of reconnect it. So they did that, and he ended up having 3 surgeries in his first 6 months. He's doing great now. He's still got some bowel movement issues and things like that. But yeah, it's kind of been a long journey. Like I said, I've been to several different schools for several different reasons. Promotion, fired, and moving for family, and I've had a lot of experiences. Kind of really throughout my life, I've kind of learned things the hard way. Grew up without a dad, and we talk about that as coaches with our kids that don't have fathers, and I lived it, so I understand the importance of having role models, because I really didn't, and I had, like I said, I had to learn everything the hard way. But my coaching career has been no different than that. Um, but being married, having four kids, moving a lot, like I said, going back and forth at every, all the different levels, and having a lot of success, and some failures, of course, in this business. You coach long enough, that's going to happen. Um, and I feel like God is kind of just guiding me in my journey the whole time. And I was just a young punk when I started, obviously, and didn't know how to raise a family, didn't know how to be a good coach. And so I kind of learned everything through coaching the hard way also. But luckily I was, got to work with a lot of great guys, and Coach Basil was my head coach when I first started. And he taught me a lot about, old school and, just treating people right all the time and things like that. So, you learn things all throughout the journey. And, um, and now, to be honest with you, I'm in a great place with my family. I've been able to, and I'm sure we'll get into that more in detail. I've been able to put my family first for real. Every coach talks about it, but we don't always do it.
Yes.
And so I've really been able to put them first, and it's worked out perfect working with Coach Glass. And I'll get into some of those details, I'm sure too. But it's a perfect working relationship with me and him. And obviously we have a lot of good kids, and was kind of the perfect storm when we came in. So I'm blessed, and I couldn't be any happier now with my journey, even though I had to learn some things the hard way. But it's now I love football and love my family and get to spend the appropriate time with both. And it's, just from a selfish personal reason, like I've never been happier. And one point I really want to make, and I'm sure I'll touch on this some more, is especially head coaches, when you got young coaches, the happier, they say happy wife, happy life, right? Well, the happier you are personally in your personal life, the better coach you're going to be. Okay.
Yes.
And if you have a coach that's spending 2 hours at school and they're in a great mood and they're happy, compared to 4 or 5 hours and they're miserable and their home life's not good and they're struggling with the balance, they're not going to be a good coach anyway.
Absolutely.
So, when I first started, it was all about the time. When I got my first head coaching job at Richlands, Coach Van Horn was with me. That's when he first started coaching. I mean, we were pulling all-nighters, like we're in college. And we just thought that's what you had to do. And I don't regret those things, because I learned a lot by having that kind of work ethic. But the balance is what's important now. And I've just realized the balance is not just about the family, but the happier you are personally, the better coach you're going to be.
Yes.
If you have a young assistant coach that doesn't know what he wants to do and he doesn't want to watch film for 8 hours a day, and you force him into doing that, he's not going to be worth anything as a coach. So there's just so many variables in life, and when family and everything kind of combines together. And I think you really don't know till you know.
Yes.
Once you kind of figure out that balance and figure out that piece and figure out what kind of coach you can be with that kind of mindset, it really changed everything for me, to be honest. So I absolutely love coaching right now at Hickory with Coach Glass, and love my family, and it's, really blessed to be where I'm at right now.
Yeah, nicely stated, Coach. And again, congratulations on the 14-1 season. You've seen it all. Winning games is very, very important in the high school ranks, but with success comes commitment, like you mentioned. How do you manage the demands of coaching at a high level while also staying present with your family?
Yeah. Well, like I said, let me start off by saying this too, Coach. I don't have all the answers. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the way I do things is the right way, or one thing I really learned about this world and about people is there's 8 billion people in the world, and everybody's different. So what might work for me might not work for you. What makes my wife happy might not make your wife happy. What the commitment and how we communicate and stuff at Hickory is, I know, not going to work for a lot of people. So every situation is different. I'm just giving you my experiences. And the coaches watching this, I mean, if you can pick up one little snippet that will help you with your balance between family and coaching, then I think this is a positive thing. But I certainly don't have all the answers for it. But when I first started, I had, in my mind, I had to outwork everybody. Okay. And so early in my career, I've literally been accused of working too hard. And now later in my career, people accuse me of not working hard enough. It's, you're too hard, you're too soft, you work too much, you don't work enough. And that's high school football, comes with the territory. The more games you win, the less that stuff comes in, right?
Yes. Yes.
But for me, it's, as a Christian football coach and a family man, you say faith, family, football in that order, right? That's what I was taught when I first started coaching. Well, not many coaches do that. I know I didn't do that for a long time. And I probably wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't put in that time to study. I actually played high school football for 1 year and then, did some other things and played lacrosse and kind of got out of football for a while. So I didn't really know anything when I first started coaching. So I had to learn everything. And from offense, defense, special teams, and the technique and how everything worked and the relationship. So I had to put in the time to learn those things. But looking back on it, there's a couple incidences that you don't remember every single thing you do, but there's a couple flashes in my brain of things that I did and said back then that, like, if I saw somebody do that now, it would disgust me. You know,
Yes.
um, for example, my son had to go back to the hospital. My wife's like, I got to take him back to the hospital. His incisions open up. And I'm like, well, let me finish practice. I'll meet you there.
Mm.
And looking back on that, I'm like, dude, like, you're a piece of shit. Like, you chose to stay at practice for 30 minutes instead of going to the hospital with your son. And so, I'm very self-critical and self-aware. And like I said, sometimes it takes me a while to figure it out. But there are things that I've done where I put football first that I promise myself I'm not going to do anymore. So, especially with this most recent position, the last 4 years at Hickory, I told, and like I said, everybody's different. Everybody's at a different place in their career. It depends on your relationship and who you're working with, if you can get away with things like this. But when I decided to talk to Coach Glass about going to Hickory, I told him and the principal, I said, listen, there's going to be a lot of times where I'm either going to piss you off or I'm going to piss my wife and family off. Okay.
Mm.
Those 50-50 things, like going to a basketball game or, going to a baseball game or, coming in early to help with equipment, just whatever, just various things. And I told him, I said, I'm going to piss you off every time because I'm at a point in my career where I'm going to legitimately put my family first, and I'm not going to pretend. So if my wife's tired and she had to work late and she needs help with the 4 kids, and then I'm not going to go to that basketball game. I'm gonna go home and be there for her. And so, like I said, when I first started, it was 100% football. It was always football first. You'll be fine. You don't need me. I'll be home when I'm home. And now I kind of flipped it completely opposite. And obviously everything in between, like I said, throughout my coaching career, but it works for us because we're in a situation where our offensive staff is phenomenal. We all get along great. We're all really good friends, and we kind of have a routine of what we do and the drills we want to do and our installation process. So we don't even meet. We don't have coaches meetings,
Mm.
which blows people away when I tell them. Head coaches look at me sideways like, no, be quiet. Don't say that.
Mm.
We don't meet on Sundays anymore, not even during the season.
Mm.
And again, that wouldn't work for everybody. It's just our situation because we're, Coach Glass has 3 daughters. Coach Simmons has a few kids. He's our defensive coordinator now, Monty Simmons. And so, we all are putting our family first. So if one of us, we had practice a couple of weeks ago where Coach Glass couldn't be there because he was in Tennessee with his daughter. Okay. But we have a system where our coaches are all on the same page and we work well together where we can have a practice without the head coach or the OC or the DC there and be okay. And we kind of built it that way. But like I said, we don't meet. It's coaches will watch the film on their own. We'll just text back and forth kind of what we want to do. And I text the practice schedules out to them before every practice. And like I said, people think it's crazy that we do it that way, but I can just remember 20 years ago starting coaching and sitting in a coaches meeting for 8 hours and realizing, okay, they like to run cover too. Okay. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yes. Yes.
you can watch a film on your own and figure that out in 20
Yes.
minutes. You don't need to be at a coaches meeting for 10 hours. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? And again, I don't regret it because I learned so much by doing it. But as you get older, you realize that, 15 minutes here, an hour there, like that stuff adds up. And it's,
It does.
and with your kids, it's not quality, it's quantity.
Yes.
You hear that and people without kids don't really understand. Like it's not about, well, I work hard and I spend quality time with my kids. They don't want the quality. They just want the time. You don't have to take them to a movie and take them shopping every day. They just want to hang out with you. So, and of course, when you have 4 kids at home and there's, it's chaos sometimes, and just being there to help with some of that stuff. And so it's really kind of changed my perception on it. But um, you got to win to have your job, right? You got to have a job to feed your kids. So
Yes.
it's not like you can just completely disregard your job, because you still
Hmm.
have, obligations there. But if you can find a way and the biggest thing is working together with people that understand that, you know, um, and we just have a perfect situation for me personally, where I can be first for my family now and try to do as much as I can. It's still not enough, of course, because raising kids is impossible. And my wife is amazing, and she does so much for us. And um, but it's just a great situation now where I mean, every 15 minutes, if there's a coach that's waiting with the kids for their rides to get picked up, and they're waiting there anyway, and I leave, and they look at me sometimes like, oh, you don't want to be here. And well, that's not true. I'd just rather be with my family during all those, every minute that I can steal with them is important. But here's the kicker, coach, and this is what I want people to understand. I feel like I'm the best coach I've ever been right now. You know what I'm saying? And
Yes.
it's not because I'm just putting in all this time and learning all these new schemes. I do that stuff, but I can do it at home. I can do it when my kids are asleep, and
Yes.
there's different ways to do it. But I'm so much happier now and so much more at peace. Um, I'm actually healthier now, just from dieting and losing 50 pounds. But it all adds up to, when I am coaching, when I am on the field, or I am meeting with the coaches, like, I'm better than I've ever been.
Yes.
And it's not just the time. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's everything else, and it's the mental part. And um, so you can accomplish both things. You can be a great coach and a great husband and a great father. It's not easy. It's really difficult. But I truly believe, if you you know try to try to coach in a way, and as far as communication and game planning, stuff like that, try to do that in an efficient way.
Efficient way. Yes.
um and your assistants appreciate it too, because we don't have to meet on Sunday. How
Yes.
much of those, the young assistant coaches that just got married, how much they appreciate that.
No.
It's interesting, and there's a lot of variables. But you can do both, and you can be successful at both. You got to put your family first, because when you don't, everybody's miserable. You ain't gonna be worth a
Yes.
shit as a coach.
Yes.
And if you're not very good, you're not going to win. Then you can't pay your bills, and it starts with that. So I think a lot of coaches talk about it. I think it's important to do it.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I mean, even I could say this past season, our process was a little bit different. Like you, old school was the way. I mean, I remember vividly, especially as a young coach, having meetings on Sunday, going in at 3 o'clock, not leaving until 9 o'clock, like going in
Yeah.
when it's daytime and leaving when it's nighttime, right? And that's just what you did back in the day. But the more I've been, the more I've coached, the more efficient I try to be, to the point where even last year we'll have our team meeting, right? Our coaches meeting in the school. But as far as offensive go, we'll talk about goals, watch film on your own, and I will literally call them and just ask them, hey, what do you like? Okay, what do you like this week? What do we do well, etc. And then, like you, just go ahead and text that plan out. And then before you know it, everything is rocking and rolling. But most importantly, our coaches are with their families, and like you said, happy wife, happy life. But most importantly, if they're not spending their Sundays around the clock in a building that they're going to see tomorrow, even better.
Right. Absolutely.
Yes.
And technology too. I mean, just like
Yes.
with anything, um, I'm old school works. Okay. Let's be
Yeah, it
honest.
does. It does.
And we
Yes.
and we don't just have to talk about football. You can talk about life and
Yes.
family values and all those things. Like that's that kind of mentality and that kind of work ethic works. Like that, the success comes from it. I mean, it's
Yes.
proven over time. And like I said, it's not just football, but times change, technology has improved, so we can use huddle.
Yes.
Um, and we use that as much as we can. We check the kids, make sure they log in their time. When we share the film of a new opponent, if we have a starter that doesn't watch film that weekend, then obviously we can address that individually, but we can monitor them watching it. We can put our installs on huddle that they can see.
Yes.
And what we do a lot is we text each other. So, our receiver coach will text me and say, look at play 53. This looks like cover 2. Do you think this is cover 2? So we meet, but we just do it in an efficient way where we're texting or we're calling if we need to, or we're sharing stuff on huddle. And of course it helps when we're all on the same page and we don't have guys, trying to do things their own way and struggle. And, success has a lot to do with that. Obviously, let's not be naive about it. If we're 3-8, they, oh, we need to meet. Oh, we need to do this, or I need to have more input, blah, blah, blah. But when you're winning and things are going smooth, it's a little bit easier to get away with
Always.
that. So, it always comes down to winning, but all these things that we do and getting buy-in and getting community support and, all the things you need to be successful when you're winning, it's so much easier to just look at culture, for example, right? It's, you have a good culture when you're winning. They believe you, right? Oh, well, he knows what he's talking about. We're winning. So it's, so that's a big factor, but you can be the same coach at one place and win, and be the same coach at another place and be 3-8. And there's two totally different perceptions of you. And it's, like I said, I've had so much experience back and forth in different schools. And, I've been blessed to be part of to run really good offenses. We have at 5 of the 6 schools I was at, we have the school record for points per game, right? I go to Independence, I don't know shit about offense. Within the first week, they're questioning my ability to coach offense, and you know what I mean? And 3 state championships and 5 school records, but we went there and went 2-9 the first year, so I don't know what I'm doing, so then it's a little bit harder with the culture and stuff. But
absolutely, coach. So let me ask you this: have you ever had to adjust your own mindset or habit to promote a healthier balance?
Oh, absolutely. And like I was trying to say, I know I rambled a little bit, but me personally, I've learned everything the hard way. Okay. My mom wasn't around a lot. I raised myself a little bit. Like I said, never had a dad. My mom passed away, 6 or 7 years ago. So I've had to kind of teach myself a lot and figure out who to listen to and who to learn from, and took me a while to realize how wise my wife is and I should listen to her more, things like that. And just being around different coaches and learning different ways. And in my older age, I feel like I'm getting wiser, and I'm trying to evaluate every situation. When I do something and I'm driving home and I think about, did I do the right thing? Did I say the right thing? Did I handle this the right way? 20 years ago, I didn't do that. It was on to the next thing. It was never the whole self-evaluation, process. When you're younger, it's like, I'm the king. I don't need to self-evaluate. What are you talking about? But I think as you get older, and of course, as your kids get older, you start to reevaluate. So for me, it's been an ongoing process. And that's why I started the conversation off with, I'm not some expert on family balance. I have a lot of experiences doing the right way and the wrong way. And, it's just a constant learning tool for me. And it's communication with your kids, it's communication with your wife, and, trying to figure out, different things, and, where you need to sacrifice as far as family goes, and where you need to sacrifice as far as football goes. You kind of feel those things out, and, everybody's different. Every situation's different. Every family's different. And, your aspect might change on a particular detail from one week to the next, so I think it's a growing process. And that's with life, right? We're egotistical male football coaches, right? That's just, it's in our nature. Like, you can't be a successful football coach if you don't have that little bit of edge about you. So balancing that internally, is a big part of that too. And, like I said, it's an ongoing process of always evaluating the situation, kind of getting a feel for it. And, if when I said it, I told my principal and head coach, I'm going to piss you off before I piss my wife off, right? Well, if I piss them off 3-4 days in a row, maybe I need to you know, try to repair that relationship a little bit. Don't just push them
Yes,
off this, you know what I'm saying? And
yes.
so
That
I think it's an
balance.
ongoing process. If you're not willing to almost reevaluate how you do things every day, then I think you get stuck. And I think a lot of times we do things that we don't even realize we're doing it. And I just remember being a younger coach and saying some stupid things, and nobody ever told me. And then eventually somebody says, "What? You know that you like this, or you say this word a lot that bothers people?" I'm like, "Oh shit, I do." Like I didn't ever even realize it. So I think you get better self-evaluating, but the balance is an ongoing process for sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely a growth mindset, and if you get complacent, complacency is the enemy. Coach, let me ask you this: what are some specific things you do during your week to help you spend a little bit more time with your family? A better way to ask that is what are some specific things you do to help maintain time with your family during the game planning process?
Mhm. Um, well, so like we start off the week, we don't meet on Sundays.
Mhm.
So that's obviously a big deal. And
Big deal.
yeah, and we can, I watch film and kind of do stuff on my own, but I can, if my wife's taking a nap, I'll jump on the computer, or if she takes the kids shopping or whatever, you find time to kind of to get in that stuff on a Sunday. And then during the week, and this made a big difference too. During the week, when practice is over, I'm out of there,
Yeah.
and and that's where I'm sure some of the other younger assistants, especially like why is he always getting out of here so fast? I remember when I first started, we'd have younger coaches do that, and the older coaches were like, he's always got to leave. He just wants to leave, and now it's we'll make a joke about it. I'm like, I put in my time. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I've and I love the guys we work with. Don't get me wrong, but think about how much time we spend with the coaches already.
A lot.
It's if you just take 30 minutes after practice every day of just hanging out with the coaches, which again I love, but that's 30 minutes a day I get to hang out with my kids.
Yes.
So you steal every minute.
Mhm.
So um we get out of school at 2:30, so we start practice at 3, which is awesome because we don't
That is awesome.
and and this is more of a head coach thing too. We don't practice 3 hours a day.
Mm.
We pride ourselves on being efficient. We had somebody come watch practice the other day and says it looks like a college practice out there, and it's like that's just kind of our philosophy. If we're going to be out there for 90 minutes, we are going to absolutely get after it for 90 minutes. There's not going to be no standing around. Every drill's got to be going fast. We run a lot of tempo anyway, so that kind of fits with that philosophy too. And we coach on the fly, and some coaches struggle with that, especially at first, but it's just kind of how we are. We coach on the fly. We're nonstop. We're really fast. We try to get as many reps as we can. And like I said, we don't practice for 3 hours a day. We try to keep it as short as we can, especially once we get into the season.
Mm.
So I think that definitely helps. Um, One thing specific as an OC that I do that I started doing the last couple of years is I put a lot on our quarterback as far as
Yes.
preparation goes. So one thing our quarterback started doing was he does the scouting report.
Mm.
So I always do a scouting report. Basically, when we start watching the other team on film, we just get a piece of paper, we write down the starters, we put their number, their position, their height and weight, offers if they got offers, stuff like that. And so now I have the quarterback do that. And
Mm.
so
I like that.
it saves me, 30 minutes maybe, go on max
Yes.
reps, get the heights and weights, saves me 30 minutes a week. But we got a hungry quarterback who is earning respect of his teammates because he sends it in the group chat, right?
I like it.
So the players know that the quarterback's doing the work. It gives him a better understanding of, you know, not just the scheme, but the personnel,
Mm.
and it gives him a better opportunity to identify maybe weak spots from a personnel standpoint of the defense where he'd want to attack. And so it's, you can look at it one saying, "Oh, well, Coach Natoli's lazy. He has the kids do all the work for him." Well, okay, I don't care. You can say that if you want, but the reality is it's making our quarterbacks better.
Yes. I like that.
He's getting better mentally. He does a better job of preparing. He earns respect from his teammates by doing it. And then another thing that we started doing 2 years ago also was I require all our starters to do scouting reports on their own. And
Mm.
so what we do is, so we have the group chat. And so if, if we're playing a 3-4, our center he has to put the name of the nose guard. So whatever player you're going to play against, if you're our X receiver, whatever corner plays on that side. So you got to type in the group chat, that player's name, the player's height and weight. And I make them look at their social media just to see if they can find anything, anything that might help them during the game or whatever. So I require all our starters to basically do a quick evaluation of the specific kid or position that they're playing against.
Mm.
If we run dart a lot, so our tackles have to put the inside linebackers that they're going to be blocking. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? So again, that saves me time from doing the scouting report stuff, but it's putting it on them. But they're obviously getting better because now they're invested. Now they want to practice harder. They want to play harder. They understand more of who they're playing against. When I do the walkthrough on Monday and talk about, this is the defense they run, this is number 17, and this is how he plays, and they're not in their heads because they've already did this work. So, so I just try to be strategic about how we divide up the work, basically the busy work, right?
Yes.
And it's not me trying to be lazy and put work off on people. It's just me trying to be efficient, right? We talked about efficiency. Yes. So trying to be efficient in my life, trying to be efficient in our players, and ultimately trying to win, which helps everything, right? We're talking about, morale and family time and how we communicate with our team and still be successful. And so it's all geared towards efficiency and towards winning. So, Saturday, we have a rule. Coach Glass has a rule. We do nothing on Saturday.
Mm.
So we're not even allowed to text each other on Saturday about the game. Now if we're in a round 4 playoff game, we might say, "Damn, Dudley's really good." You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it's basically a rule of ours. We don't talk on Saturday about football. If you're going to watch film, you do it on your own. But Saturday's our family day, basically, and we really try to just take that day off completely and don't even think about football and kind of recharge and reconnect with your family just from the long week. And then Sunday we start working, but again, we don't meet, right? So I live 30 minutes from Hickory, so I'm saving an hour just not having to drive back and forth, right? And then the 3, 4, 5 hour meeting, whatever you have. I mean, you can do it over the phone, you can do it over Huddle now. So so we're pretty efficient with the time we put in all throughout the week, and this is during the season, of course. Bye week, we really try to use the bye week to use the bye week for your kids to kind of refresh, right? Well, we do the same thing as coaches, so
yes,
we won't practice on a Friday during that bye week, and depending on when it is and the holiday, we might not go on Monday, or might have a short practice or whatever, and but just kind of refresh ourselves. And the last 2 playoff runs, I've felt great going into round 3 and 4. Usually you're dead by then when you get to make a deep run, like you're just, there's been times where I thought I was going to die because I was literally shot. But just, I'm telling you, 15 minutes here, 30 minutes here, and doing that has really helped. Another thing Coach Glass does that's really awesome is we split up our duties. So like quarterbacks will have week 1. So the quarterback coaches and the quarterbacks have to make sure the locker room's cleaned up, and the quarterback coach has to make sure all the kids are gone, right? When I was a head coach, I was always the last one to leave, and I'm just sitting there. Now we break it up, so it's when practice is over, all our coaches leave except the quarterback coach. And he's the one that basically babysits, wait till rides come,
like that.
And the quarterbacks clean the locker room too, so you don't have to, so yeah, you do it. You got to stay once or twice, 1 week or 2 weeks. You know what I'm saying? We've got a bunch of coaches, so that's really helped. And like I said, going back to the beginning, it's such a perfect relationship with where I'm at at Hickory with Coach, and we do so many things like that to maximize our time with our family. While at the same time still having a great relationship with each other and still being able to focus on football. Now we're prepared. Don't get me wrong. My teaching situation really helped with that too. I'm basically teaching study hall this year, so I got to put in a lot of time, in huddle preparing and things like that. And I just remember as an assistant sometimes coming in and just being there for 8 hours and like, I could have done this in 15 minutes, you know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And something else, you brought up a good point about the quarterback helping you with the game planning process.
Mhm.
This past season was the first time that I really sat down with our quarterback and said, "Hey, listen, help me put together this call sheet," and it worked like a charm. I got a chance to see what he liked. He got a chance to
Yeah.
see what I like, but most importantly, the game was called based off of what he liked, based off of film study. So anytime that your main guy has some say in the game planning, it's going to build his confidence, and before you know it, there's sometimes where you can just put the controller down and you guys are thinking the same way and everything's just clicking. So that's pretty cool that you put the ownership of your starters on scouting. While you was talking, I was taking a few notes. That's some very good stuff, Coach. But now, before I let you go, what piece of advice would you give any coach looking to improve their work-life balance?
I'd say put your family first and don't just talk about it. I think it's important that you know, if you're an assistant coach, first of all, if you're a head coach, you set the schedule. You can do what you want, right? Um, you better win, of course. But as an assistant coach, I think it's really important that you're upfront and transparent with the head
Yes,
coach. That's got to be number one. And like I said, I had that conversation when I went to Hickory from day one. I said, listen, let's do this thing. Let's build a dynasty. I'd love to work with you. This is a gold mine at Hickory. Is the perfect situation as far as talent goes. But just be completely upfront and honest, because you can say, well, my family's important, but be specific about it. You know what I
yes,
mean? And I think if you have that relationship and that honesty with your bosses, whoever that may be, whatever that situation is, and obviously be honest with your family at the same time, but just do everything you can to put your family first. Don't miss your son's soccer game. Don't miss your daughter's cheer competition. Don't miss your daughter's volleyball game. I mean, you know, look at the big picture, right? If you missed one practice during the season, do you think that would have changed your win-loss record? If let's say you as a head coach, if you missed one practice, like, you think that would just blow your whole team up and then you guys would be done? No, you'd probably be okay, right? One practice in the grand scheme of things. But if you miss that volleyball game
mm,
with your daughter, that might have a lasting impact, right? That might be the best game she ever had. Maybe she broke her leg and you weren't there to be there with her, whatever. So you put things in perspective like that. It's, when you're young, it's every day matters. I mean, I didn't want to miss a drill when I was younger, not a minute. Like, we were on the period clock. You know what I'm saying? We didn't miss a period. Like, no, it's time to rotate now, not 30 seconds from now. It was every rep was so important. And now, I mean, there's times where we'll be having a really tough practice and coach will be like, we're good. Let's cut it short today. 20 years ago, I'd have been like, you're soft. What are you talking about? But you cut it short, and guess what?
yes.
The coaches are happier. You're home 10 minutes earlier. Your wife's happier. And guess who else is happier? Your players are
Your
happier.
players.
So, I mean, 80 minutes of great quality practice is better than 100 minutes of pissed off, miserable kids.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just reality. And but yeah, put your family first. Be completely honest with the people you're working with. And if you're a head coach, be completely honest with your assistant coaches, and because you don't want them to resent you um, by putting your family first, but you got to be upfront and honest about it, and I think Coach Glass does a great job of that. He tells us ahead of time, I'm not going to be there Saturday. I'm going to Tennessee. Nobody questions it because we all understand that's our culture. Um, so yeah, be specific and be intentional and be specific and how you spend your time in every minute. But also it's important to be able to communicate with the other coaches. And so, even our players understand, it's, where's Coach Natoli at? He left already. Okay. That they understand that it's family first. And I mean, that's a good example for them kids too, because this generation, man, they're so sucked up in the grind.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
life is so hard for these kids. I think we don't
It
even
is.
realize it. Think
It
about
really
when
is.
think about when you were 15 years old. compared to what these kids go through now at 15 years old.
Yes.
Just with technology and the phones and the information and all the polarizing things that go on in the world, 15-year-old kids are involved. We didn't know nothing about none of that stuff when we were
At
young.
all.
We went outside to play football and baseball in the yard, and that was it. And so it's, and there's a lot of pressure on these kids because every sport's year round. It's, you got to get scholarships, you got to make money, you got to do this, you got to do that. And sometimes I think we don't sit back and realize kind of what these kids go through. So be honest about your communication, not just with your family, not just with your coaches, but with your players too. And it makes for a healthy relationship for everyone.
Yeah, nicely stated, Coach. Well, thank you for listening to the All Season 365 podcast. I'm Coach Simmons with Coach Natoli. We're signing off.